Yeah.
Is this okay? Is that okay? Okay. Okay.
Very much.
Yeah.
Om Akhyatmanasya Janasmakaya Chakshurvritam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Lopistam Sarvabhutale Swayamapakaranayam Dadati Swadikam Namah Vishnuvara Krishnavista Uttale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaha Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pachayame Nirvishesha Shunivadi Pasata Vishatharine Vachakalpa Tevasya Kripa Sindhuvevata Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadada Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for welcoming me in your temple here in Miami. So maybe let me add a few little things to the introduction, just so you know a little bit where I'm coming from. Actually, for the last 25 years, I have been very involved in preaching in Bangladesh. And this is where I learned so many things about our Vaishnav culture. And that inspired me to establish an institute for spiritual culture. So these days I spend 5 months per year preaching in India and Bangladesh, and 7 months traveling actually all around the world. This list of countries you heard was a little outdated, that was 20 years ago. So these days, I'm going all around the US and South Africa and Australia, New Zealand and Mauritius and Kenya and so many places and all around Europe. And yes, during my time preaching in Bangladesh, actually I received a whole transformation, very transformational insights into how our Vaishnava philosophy is meant to be lived practically. Bangladesh, for those who don't know, is a very special place. Most of Mahaprabhu's associates, they come from that part, which is now Bangladesh, right? And there's so many holy places, Advaita Acharya's birthplace, and Srivas Thakur and Rupa and Sanatana Swami, and so many. Yeah, so, and when I travel there, I'm only with the locals. There's no Western devotees living there. So I travel with them and live with them and eat with them and preach with them, and I learned so many things from them. And that's what gave me the realization that we need some little training and education in how to actually practically live our philosophy. And so when I'm in Mayapur, I teach all different courses which I put together. And now I'm putting these courses in book form. So yeah, at the end of the little presentation, I can tell you a few words about the books. Maybe somebody from you would like to check them out or get some or whatever. And by the way, they are not available on Amazon, at least not for me. Maybe some people buy them off me and put them there for triple the price or something. But yeah, the hardcover books are only available for me, actually. Okay, so much as a little introduction. So I wanted to speak to you today about the power of consciousness. Actually, do we have a Bhagavad Gita? Yes? Okay. Yes, I would like to share a few little thoughts and insights on the topic of consciousness. What is consciousness? Where does it come from? And how does our consciousness affect others? And how does other people's consciousness affect us? After all, we are the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So we use this term consciousness quite a lot. And yet, we may not even be fully aware of what consciousness actually is. And Prabhupada was always saying, before becoming Krishna conscious, we have to become conscious first. First we have to become conscious. Then we can become Krishna conscious. So let us try and become conscious of consciousness. Yes. Yeah, let us try and understand more deeply what this consciousness is all about. So in the Bhagavad Gita 13:34, there is a very nice verse which gives us some little insights what consciousness is all about. So I will not chant the Sanskrit and all that. I will just go straight to the translation. There actually Krishna gives a very nice analogy that consciousness is just like the sun illuminating the whole universe, in the same way consciousness is illuminating the whole body. So I will read the translation for you. O son of Bharat, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. So it's a very nice analogy which we can easily relate to. So like the sun is illuminating the whole universe, in the same way consciousness comes from the soul. It's the life force in the soul, from the soul, and it floods the whole body with consciousness. Yeah. Let us read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are various theories regarding consciousness. Here in Bhagavad Gita, the example of the sun and the sun. As the sun is situated in one place, but is illuminating the whole universe, so a small particle of spirit soul, although situated in the heart of this body, is illuminating the whole body by consciousness. Thus, consciousness is the proof of the presence of the soul, as sunshine or light is the proof of the presence of the sun. When the sun is present in the body, there is consciousness when the soul, not the sun, when the soul is present in the body, there is consciousness all over the body. And as soon as the soul has passed from the body, there is no more consciousness. This can easily be understood by any intelligent man. So let's try and be intelligent here. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combination of matter. It is the symptom of the living entity. The consciousness of the living entity, although qualitatively one with the supreme consciousness, is not supreme because the consciousness of one particular body does not share that of another body. But the supersoul, which is situated in all bodies as the friend of the individual soul, is consciousness of all bodies, is conscious of all bodies. But that is the difference between supreme consciousness and individual consciousness. So in other words, Prabhupada explains that Krishna is conscious of every living entity, whereas we are only conscious of this one body. And we can say, thank God, we are only conscious of one body and not conscious of so many other bodies, right? That I think that would drive you crazy, actually. Yes. So basically it means that consciousness is the symptom of life. So as soon as there is the spirit soul present, there is consciousness, actually. Not only in the human species of life, but actually in any species of life, right? So animals have consciousness, even plants, trees, flowers. Whenever there is growth and byproducts, that means there is life. So that means the spirit soul is present. So that means there is consciousness there. And sometimes the consciousness is in a more dull and covered form. And sometimes it is in a more uplifted and elevated form. So there's all different levels of consciousness. So and consciousness floods the whole body. It actually keeps every cell of the body alive. It keeps the metabolism alive. Yeah. Like I'm coming from a medical background, so anybody who knows a little bit about medical science knows that when you, for example, you cut off the tip of your finger, you have only about 15, 20 minutes to quickly sew it back on. So if that cut off piece is longer separated from the powerhouse of consciousness, the soul, then the cells die, right? Yes, that's how it works, And consciousness is not only flooding the body, but it actually comes out through every pore of the skin even. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, we have some pictures there. Usually, yes, Mahaprabhu, you see, they are always painted with some effulgence, some halo. The aura, exactly. So this is not just some artistic tool or something, but it is actually that pure divine consciousness which emanates from the Lord himself or from very elevated devotees. So it is actually factual. When we are a little perceptive, we can feel that, that energy coming from a person. There's a nice little story when Prabhupada was once walking to a Rath Yatra procession. I think it was somewhere here in America. And he was surrounded by disciples who were walking with him through a city. And then some of the disciples overheard, talk between two policemen. And one policeman was saying to the other, "Look at this man, he is glowing." Yes. So these policemen had no clue who Prabhupada was. But yet they could perceive that from Prabhupada was an effulgence coming, that he was shining. Yes. So that's how strong consciousness is, it emanates, and depending, of course, by nature, as we know, the soul is all pure, actually, part and parcel of the Lord. So by nature, the soul is pure, and the consciousness, the life force emanating from the soul is also pure. But being, covered by the three modes of material nature, being here in the material world, so the consciousness is covered and is not so pure anymore. We can basically imagine, so on one end of the spectrum is this divine, sublime, godly consciousness, and then on the other end of the spectrum there is, envy, false ego, lust, greed, these qualities affecting the consciousness. We can call it false ego consciousness, right? Yes. So, and the process of devotional service is meant to transform our consciousness, that we purify our consciousness, that we come back to this divine, sublime, godly consciousness. That's basically what we are trying to do here. So, and of course, in between these two ends of the spectrum, there's all kinds of mixtures and shades and grades and all that. So yes, basically, Prabhupada had this divine, sublime consciousness emanating from him. But then there's also, lustful, greedy, false ego consciousness we can feel, we can perceive of somebody whose consciousness is not so divine and pure, right? So if we are a little perceptive, we can feel these things. And we may also have that experience if we had some tension, some argument with somebody, and we are in a room with that person, especially if the room is not very big, and even though nobody says anything, but we can maybe perceive there is some tension there. And we can perceive, this person is angry with me, and there's some uncomfortable energy there, So that is the power of consciousness, yeah. But it is quite subtle, I can share one funny little story which illustrates even more how consciousness is in every cell of the body. Like I know one family in Australia, a devotee family, where the wife, she donated one of her kidneys to her husband because he had a kidney failure. He had a kidney failure. So she gave one of her kidneys to him. And she was the only one in the family, or she still is the only one in the family, who loves to eat chocolate. Nobody else in the family eats chocolate, only she. So and after the surgery, when they came back to their house, she felt like eating some chocolate. So she went to her cupboard to take some of her chocolate stash there, but lo and behold, all the chocolate was gone. And she was wondering, who ate my chocolate? I'm the only one in the family who eats chocolate. So she went to her husband and asked, do you have an idea where my chocolate went? So he was a little embarrassed and he was saying, well, I have to admit, all of a sudden I had this cravings for chocolate. It just overcame me and I went to your cupboard and ate it all. So then they were thinking, well, maybe this is connected with this kidney transplantation. So then next checkup, they told the story to their doctor. And the doctor was smiling and saying, yes, yes, we know this. Every time we do some organ transplantation, then the person receiving the organ for some time has the same tastes and cravings as the person giving it. And then the doctor added, it seems like organs can remember things, which is of course nonsense. Organs cannot remember anything. But this doctor didn't know the power of consciousness, you know? So her kidney was flooded with chocolate consciousness. It was lingering in every cell of the kidney she gave to her husband. So, and then that kidney in her husband's body emanated this chocolate consciousness. And therefore, chocolate. Isn't that amazing? You know? Yes. But it only lasts with his consciousness, which was free of chocolate consciousness. Chocolate free. Yeah, so I mean, that's a cool proof how consciousness works. Yes. And of course, also everything we create with our hands, our consciousness enters, right? I know that we say the consciousness of the cook enters the food he cooks, right? You heard that before? I'm sure you did. Yes, so that's why usually we are careful, you know, who cooks our meals. At the temple, strictly speaking, the cook should be Brahmin initiated, nicely following the process, and the better the consciousness is of the cook, you know, the more of that pure devotional consciousness enters the food, and that affects everybody who eats it. Yeah. So that's why, you know, we are not only vegetarians, but we are also a little mindful, asking who cooked it. You know, what kind of consciousness is the cook? So that's why all those devotees who, you know, take things a little more seriously, they will not go out to vegetarian restaurants where the food is cooked by non-devotees. You know? Yes. So we are careful about this. Even cooked food, you know, in the bakery or something, even if it is vegetarian. But yeah, there's a more subtle aspect there, you know, that the consciousness enters. And it has. Yes, and I mean, it's not only that cooking, when we cook, the consciousness enters the food, but anything we create with our hands, the consciousness enters because it is done through consciousness, right? So that's why handmade things, handcrafted things are always special, you know, very special. Let's say our mother is knitting a hat for us for the winter season, if you have one here in Miami, I'm not sure. So, yeah, her love and devotion goes into the knitting and it stays in that hat and it has a special energy, You know, it has a whole different energy than something you buy from the factory. You know, yes, it's factual. Yes. I know one devotee in Germany, he built his house basically with his own hands. Of course, he had a few tools, but he mainly used wood. And wood, of course, is already a nice material, it's alive. So when you enter his house, it's a very special energy there, very different than some concrete block there, you know, some concrete walls and flat. Because he put so much energy, so much devotion and love and care into that. It took him years to build it. And that devotional energy, you can still feel it. It's hanging around there in the house, you know. Yeah. So, yeah, these subtleties are there, you know, definitely. And of course, as we mentioned, not only human beings have consciousness, but of course animals also, you know, some species of life there. They can do all kinds of things which we can't. You know, dogs can smell all kinds of things at the airport when you go through immigration. They can smell an apple in the suitcase and all that. You know, so yeah. And of course, there's consciousness there. My God, definitely. You know, they have joy and fear and so many things. You know, but even trees, plants, they all have consciousness. You know, yeah. Actually, Prabhupada was very particular not to cut down trees. Yes, yes. Because, yeah, even in that tree body, there's a personality there. Yes. And I remember when I was a teenager, which is quite a long time ago, 50 years or something, I heard this report on the radio about the consciousness of trees. And that impressed me so much that I'm still remembering it 50 years later. And they demonstrated how you can transform the vibrations of consciousness into sound vibration. Somehow you can do that, don't ask me how. But they demonstrated what a tree sounds like who is peaceful. So it was just some buzzing noise. So, and then they demonstrated what a tree sounds like, which is an anxiety, intense anxiety. And there, ooh, it was all going up and down. And then they explained why this tree was in anxiety. Because that tree saw a man coming towards the tree who had 3 years earlier cut off some branches. And that tree recognized that person and was in anxiety. Oh no, not this guy is coming again. He's gonna maybe cut off again some of my branches. Yeah. I mean, that's quite amazing, isn't it? Yes, yes. Of course, we may ask, how can a tree recognize a person? The tree doesn't have any eyes. But no, the tree can also feel the consciousness of that person coming. Oh, yes. You know. Yeah, so very interesting, you know. And there's a story also with Prabhupada in Mumbai. Any of you have been to Juhu temple in Mumbai? When you're outside the temple, you see some tree which is almost in the middle of the road. And it's really sticking out. And you wonder, what's this tree doing here? You know? Yeah, it's really in the way. And there is a story from Prabhupada where he was really ordering not to cut down this tree. He was insisting, don't cut it down. So, and the devotees followed that, and the tree is still there. And when you see it, you immediately wonder, this tree is actually in the way. Why is this tree there? And there's a story, I think Shama Sundar tells a story in one of his Chasing Rhinos with the Swami's book, where he said when Prabhupada came to Mumbai and visited Juhu, immediately as soon as he arrived at the airport, he asked, is that tree still there? Or did you cut it down? You know? Yeah, so I mean, it's good to be a little aware of this, you know, how all these different species of life, there is consciousness there, you know, and yeah, we should not just cut down trees and so on, and we should not be careless with other species of life and so on, you know, but actually, yeah, be more protective. You know. Now, another very interesting thing is that actually consciousness travels on sound vibration. I dare say this is quite an amazing arrangement by the Lord. You know, for once, you know, the voice is very closely connected with emotions. So if a person is angry or upset, very difficult to hide that, right? It just comes out of your mouth. Doesn't matter how much you're trying to hide it. You know, if somebody knows us well, they can feel, oh, that person is upset, depressed, whatever, you know, yes. So that's one thing. But yeah, the consciousness travels on sound vibration. So as soon as we open our mouth, we say something or we sing, consciousness travels on that sound vibration and affects every person who hears it. Yeah. So kirtan, for example, is actually a whole transcendental affair. It's not just some music or something, but it's a whole exchange of consciousness. Yeah. So, and if the kirtan leader has a very elevated and sublime divine consciousness, very pure-hearted, his heart is full of love and devotion. So if such a person leads a kirtan, then that consciousness travels on the sound vibration, and especially if we are eager, if our heart is open, then it will affect our heart. Yes. And the same thing is also the other way there. You know, if the kirtan leader is not in such good consciousness, maybe even tries to make a show, showing off, or look at me, my voice is so fantastic, I can sing like nobody else can, and all this kind of thing. So then this false ego consciousness travels on the sound vibration. And that will not be so uplifting to people who hear it, you know? Yeah. And even the instrument players, you know, because as we said, consciousness floods the whole body, comes out through every pore of the skin. Mridanga player, he can only play by the fingers moving through consciousness. So if a Mridanga player is in that consciousness of wanting to be noticed, showing off how nice my playing is, well, that comes out through the fingertips. And if we are a little perceptive, we can feel that. Yes. And the Madanga playing is always that touch too loud, because he wants to be noticed and heard. And actually, if you're a little perceptive, you can feel it disturbs the kirtan a little bit. Yes, yes. So whenever we enter kirtan, kirtan is a whole transcendental affair. When we enter kirtan, we should try and be in good consciousness, meaning that we want to serve. We want to serve the Mahamantra. We don't want to bring attention to ourselves and show off, but we want to be in a humble mood of service, calling out to the Lord, connecting with the Lord. That's what kirtan is all about. It's not just some jolly music or something. So, and again, once we understand that, how consciousness travels on sound vibration, then obviously we are a little careful also what kind of sound vibration we invite into our life, right? Yes. So that's why if we want to be serious in the practice of Krishna consciousness, we don't want to fill our life with some mundane sound vibration, with some rock music or some Bollywood music or whatever it may be, because that is not really, sung or played in a divine, sublime, godly consciousness, glorifying the Lord, but simply trying to make a show of oneself, right? So that's why, we like to have kirtan in our life and, fill our home with transcendental sound vibration and not all these mundane, sound vibrations, because it does affect the consciousness. Yes, it does. It does. Yeah, so there's a lot of these subtleties, the consciousness is very subtle. So the more we get some insights, then we can make a conscious choice what kind of, influences we like to invite into our life, which are helpful for our spiritual practice, which are uplifting, and remind us of Krishna, promote some, energy of sense enjoyment or something. All right, I mentioned a few little things, so let me see if you have any questions to this topic.
If anyone does have questions, speak into this microphone here, please. It's for the streaming, so we can hear also.
Does anybody have some question? Since it is a very practical.
First one asking questions, you guys like.
Well, go ahead if you have a
I was
question.
really listening to you when you were talking about consciousness, right?
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, where is the connection with consciousness and the brain? Because we know there is an intrinsic relationship between the brain and consciousness. And like you said, there's different levels of consciousness. There's subconscious, unconscious, and some other levels psychologists explain pretty well. But my question is, if the brain suffers, right? Let's say like a surgery, some part of the brain.
Yeah.
Scientists has demonstrated that some areas or some functions of the body will die. People that have trauma in the brain and they cut off, then you lose some sight, like memory or some movements of your body. So there is the strict relationship between consciousness, right, and the brain. Now they're saying that consciousness, it's everything that contains our inner self, like memory, thinking is part of the conscience, right? Thinking, and I would say feelings, sensations, the feelings of, like you were saying, the music and all of that is in the brain. If the brain suffers a damage, some of these faculties evaporates, flies away. So my question is, how does the conscious will survive when the brain is totally dead?
Well, as this verse is telling us, the consciousness is the life force. It actually comes from the soul. So it is not really dependent on the brain. You know? Yeah. The soul is in the body, using the body, so, and using the brain and all that. But the consciousness is very separate from the body, very separate, because at the moment of death, the soul moves to the next existence on the subtle body of mind, intelligence, for its ego, right?
It goes along with the consciousness.
The consciousness comes from the soul. The soul moves, and of course, then also the consciousness moves.
Alone.
Yeah, because the consciousness is the life force coming from the soul. See, in material science, people muddle it all up. And they think the consciousness, we say, yes, I am unconscious. So then, we look at the brain function. But actually, from a spiritual point of view, we understand that the consciousness comes from the soul. It's not from the brain. And the consciousness simply uses, the soul enters a certain body or accepts a certain body. So, and the consciousness floods the whole body, coming from the soul. So, and then at death, the soul moves to the next body, and of course, the consciousness goes along.
So we can say
You know?
there's a need for the conscious to enter the body at one specific time, or you can survive without it. So what's the importance of the body?
No, the soul is connected to consciousness. As Prabhupada explained in the purport, when the soul leaves, there is no more consciousness.
The body dies.
Yeah. So the consciousness, simply let's try and understand, consciousness is the life force coming from the soul. And it floods the whole body. As we said, it's in the kidney, even in pregnancy, the child gets full on the consciousness of the mother because her consciousness floods the whole body. So if it floods the kidney, of course it floods the embryo in the womb too. And even when she is breastfeeding, the consciousness is in the milk, So, and then when the soul leaves, no more consciousness.
One last question to finish my case. When you spoke about the plants, because I know that too, plants has conscious.
Yeah?
I experience it myself. The plants that I have in my house, they seek the water, they do things.
Yes, yes, yes.
When we are eating vegetables, we're eating conscious element.
Yes. So that's why Krishna says, if we offer the food, then we are relieved of the sinful reaction. Yes. Yeah. So naturally, the consciousness of a carrot is lower than the consciousness of an animal. Yeah. But still, if we don't offer it, we will get some reaction. Yes. Yeah. I think what I will do is, before you gradually get up and walk out, I do want to say a few little words about these books because they are pretty important topics. We have Spiritual Culture, Krishna's Divine System. Actually, this book highlights how man and woman are very different. They have very different natures and qualities because according to Krishna's system, they're meant to play different roles. And especially we women have a very powerful Shakti. Actually, in many ways, women are superior to men. They have a very powerful energy. A woman can bring the very best out of a man, or she can ruin his life. That's the power of a woman. You know, and we have plenty of stories in the Bhagavatam where the tinkling ankle bells make a saintly person fall down. That's the power of a woman. But you don't hear the other way around, where a man's tinkling ankle bells, unless he is Krishna, you know, makes a woman lose her mind. You know, so feminine energy, very powerful. And Bhagavatam says that we women should be the power of inspiration to the men. I'm sure the men here like to hear that. Yes. So we women should not compete with the men, but we should be the power of inspiration to the men. Yeah. Very interesting. It's all based on Prabhupada. I don't write anything unless it's based on Prabhupada. Prabhupada says it all, but yet not so easy for us to deeply understand, actually. Yeah. So yeah, the whole book is about women. Any woman who wants to have harmonious relationships with men in her life should read this book. And every man who wants to get the empowerment of a woman should also read it. Yeah. Very helpful for married life also. And I do have this book also in Russian, just in case there's somebody Russian speaking also. So then we have sheltering relationships. This is all about the importance of having a mentor, a counselor. That just having guru is not enough. We need this well-wishing, more experienced friend in our life who can guide us, who can help us how to move forward, and who can help us to balance our life. If we don't have that, very easily we stay in our comfort zone and then we become stagnant. Yes. So very important topic. We have lost so many devotees over the last 50 years because we did not understand the importance of mentorship. And there's also a chapter on envy, how envy manifests with seniors equals juniors, and so many interesting topics. Then we have the false ego, our constant companion and troublemaker. Actually, this topic of consciousness, that's the first chapter in this book. Yeah, just to introduce what is consciousness. And there's so many interesting things. False ego is so subtle, often we don't even identify it. Yes, and we can feed and boost the false ego all in the name of Krishna consciousness instead of subduing and dissolving it. And there's a whole chapter on chanting, how we should chant the holy name in japa and kirtan. Yeah, it's in this book also, because I do conduct holy name retreats. And yeah, there's like a summary of a holy name retreat in there. And I have this book also in Russian, just in case. Then we have entering the Grihastha ashram. This is a handbook for matchmaking. How to see that a man and a woman are compatible for marriage. Yeah. We have a high divorce rate in ISKCON, and very often it is connected with the fact that people are actually not compatible. Yeah, they're just attracted by each other physically, and then they fall in love, and they have the pink glasses on. That's why I made the book pink, by the way, because of the pink glasses. And then after 2 years of being together, the pink glasses wear off, and then we realize, we are not compatible. You know, we have different moods and tastes and goals and standards and whatnot. You know? Yeah, so in this book you will find a whole list of over 200 topics which a man and a woman should discuss with a cool head to really see, are we on the same page? Do we have similar goals and visions and views and you know, yeah. So it's very, very helpful, very helpful for people who are not married yet, or for parents who want to help their children to settle in a compatible marriage. You know. And then we have family life as an ashram, secrets of success, how to create the culture of bhakti in our home. We need some little training in this. Often we only know mundane family life, but to actually make life a suitable place for cultivating bhakti is not so easy. So we need some little guidance with us. So it's very helpful. It actually is like a handbook for Krishna conscious, successful family life. How to create the culture of bhakti in the home. And when that culture is there, the kids very naturally grow into Krishna consciousness. But if the culture is not there, then they will not want to practice Krishna consciousness. And in this book, you will also find a whole chapter on physical intimacy in marriage. How to actually live this principle of no illicit sex life in marriage. Nobody talks about it. People are a little confused. So I did quite some research and I came across interesting instructions from Prabhupada, which not so many people have heard. And that adds a whole different perspective to the topic. Very important. I hope this book will make our family life more Krishna conscious and at the same time emotionally balanced and healthy. And last but not least, the Vanaprastha ashram. Not Varnashram, but Vanaprastha ashram. So that's the phase in life after the kids are grown up. When the kids are settled in life, we should move on to the next ashram, the Vanaprastha ashram. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of very clear instructions how important this Vanaprastha ashram is. But yet, it is not really established yet in ISKCON. So this is the first book actually out in ISKCON on the Vanaprastha ashram. And there's a whole chapter on death also. Meeting death with joy. What happens at death, how to prepare, how to support others in this final journey, how to help them to move out and let go, you know? Yeah. But our whole life, we need good association if we want to make spiritual progress. And especially in this very last phase, the last 2 or 3 weeks, we need good association. Somehow by Krishna's arrangement, I have accompanied quite a few people in this very last stage, even my own parents too, and helped them to leave in a very focused and glorious way. So I'm sharing a lot of interesting things there, all connected with death. Yeah, sooner or later, we will all have to face that moment, and Krishna consciousness is meant to prepare us. So we leave death, we meet death with joy. You know? So if any of you would like to get some books, these last 4 books are $20 each. The first 2 are $15 each. Many people got the whole set because they're all good topics. So a whole set is a little discount, the whole set is $100. So if any one of you want to get some books, please let me know immediately because, yeah, I'm only giving this one program here. I will be a couple more days staying in the ashram, but then Wednesday I'm flying out. Yeah. And you can pay cash or with Zelle. Yes, so I'm well prepared. Okay, so maybe we'll leave it at that, 8 o'clock. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki, Swami Vivekananda ki, Gaura Premanandi.